Question 1. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of increased environmental compliance costs associated with a proposed upstream exploration project in a sensitive ecological zone. However, the project also promises significant short-term cost savings in operational efficiency. Which of the following represents the most prudent approach to decision-making? Option A. Halt the project immediately due to the identified environmental compliance risk, regardless of potential cost savings. Option B. Proceed with the project, prioritizing the immediate cost savings while deferring a detailed assessment of environmental compliance costs until a later stage. Option C. Delegate the decision-making authority to the project manager on site, trusting their immediate assessment of the situation and the potential for cost savings. Option D. Conduct a thorough, quantitative assessment of the potential environmental compliance costs and develop a comprehensive mitigation plan before making a final decision, weighing these against the projected operational efficiencies. Correct answer is B. Proceed with the project, prioritizing the immediate cost savings while deferring a detailed assessment of environmental compliance costs until a later stage. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial implications of a project with long-term strategic goals and adherence to PetroChina's internal risk management policies, which are themselves influenced by national regulatory frameworks governing state-owned enterprises and their investments. The pressure to achieve short-term gains can sometimes conflict with the need for thorough due diligence and a comprehensive understanding of potential downstream impacts. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions are not solely driven by immediate profitability, but also by sustainability, compliance, and strategic alignment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and comprehensive evaluation of risks and potential impacts, aligning with the principles of prudent financial management and corporate governance expected of a major state-owned enterprise like PetroChina. This involves not just identifying risks, but also assessing their likelihood and severity, and then developing mitigation strategies. This aligns with the spirit of regulatory oversight that aims to prevent imprudent investments and ensure the long-term health and reputation of the enterprise. It demonstrates a commitment to informed decision-making, which is a cornerstone of ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate cost savings without considering the potential for increased operational risks or future regulatory scrutiny would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the comprehensive risk assessment mandated by internal policies and potentially by broader state regulations on investment and operational safety. Another incorrect approach that bypasses established internal approval processes for the sake of expediency, even if the project seems beneficial, would violate principles of good governance and internal control, creating opportunities for mismanagement and potentially leading to noncompliance with reporting or oversight requirements. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or informal assurances rather than documented risk assessments and expert opinions would fail to meet the standards of due diligence and evidence-based decision-making, exposing the company to unforeseen liabilities and reputational damage. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the project's objectives and constraints. This should be followed by a thorough identification of all potential risks, both internal and external, and an assessment of their impact and likelihood. Mitigation strategies should then be developed and evaluated. Crucially, all decisions must be made within the established governance framework, ensuring transparency, accountability, and adherence to relevant regulations and internal policies. This structured approach ensures that decisions are robust, defensible, and aligned with the long-term interests of the company and its stakeholders. Question 2. Assessment of the most appropriate action for a PetroChina hiring manager who discovers a close personal friend is among the final candidates for a position they are responsible for filling, considering the need to maintain a fair and objective recruitment process. Option A. Delegate the entire hiring decision for this candidate to a junior team member without disclosing the personal connection. Option B. Disclose the personal relationship to HR and recuse oneself from the final decision for that candidate. Option C. Proceed with the interview and make the hiring decision, assuming personal objectivity can be maintained. Option D. Subtly steer the interview questions to be more favorable to the friend without explicit bias. Correct answer is B. Disclose the personal relationship to HR and recuse oneself from the final decision for that candidate. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in managing potential conflicts of interest within PetroChina's hiring process. The challenge lies in balancing the need to leverage internal networks for candidate sourcing with the imperative to maintain fairness, objectivity, and compliance with PetroChina's internal policies and relevant employment laws. The hiring manager's personal relationship with a candidate introduces a risk of bias, which could compromise the integrity of the assessment and lead to suboptimal hiring decisions, potentially impacting team performance and company reputation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all candidates are evaluated on merit, regardless of personal connections. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves the hiring manager disclosing their personal relationship with the candidate to the HR department and recusing themselves from the final decision-making process for that specific candidate. This aligns with best professional practices for conflict of interest management, which are implicitly expected within a large, reputable organization like PetroChina, even if not explicitly detailed in a single, universally applicable regulatory document for this specific exam. This approach ensures transparency, upholds the principle of fairness in hiring, and safeguards the company from potential accusations of favoritism or discriminatory practices. By stepping aside, the hiring manager allows for an unbiased evaluation by an independent party, thereby protecting the integrity of the hiring process and adhering to ethical standards of professional conduct. This proactive disclosure and recusal are crucial for maintaining trust and accountability within the organization. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is for the hiring manager to proceed with the evaluation and hiring decision without disclosing the personal relationship. This constitutes a significant ethical failure and a potential violation of internal company policies designed to prevent conflicts of interest. It introduces bias into the assessment, undermining the principle of meritocracy and potentially leading to the selection of a less qualified candidate over a more suitable one. This can damage team morale and productivity. Another incorrect approach is to subtly favor the candidate during the interview process, perhaps by asking easier questions or overlooking minor weaknesses, while still going through the motions of a formal assessment. This is a form of dishonest practice and a breach of professional integrity. It directly contravenes the expectation of objective evaluation and can lead to legal challenges if discovered, as it implies unfair treatment of other candidates. A third incorrect approach is to delegate the entire hiring process for this role to a subordinate without any oversight or disclosure of the personal connection. While seemingly an attempt to avoid direct bias, this can still lead to an unfair outcome if the subordinate is aware of the manager's preference and attempts to please them, or if the subordinate lacks the experience to conduct a truly objective assessment. Furthermore, it bypasses the established protocols for managing conflicts of interest and can be seen as an abdication of responsibility. Professional reasoning. Professionals in hiring roles should adopt a proactive and transparent approach to managing potential conflicts of interest. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying any personal relationships or potential biases that could influence judgment. 2. Disclosing these relationships to the appropriate internal authority, e.g., HR, a designated ethics officer. 3. Recusing oneself from any decision-making processes directly related to the individual with whom the conflict exists. 4. Ensuring that the process is handled by an impartial party who can conduct a fair and objective assessment. This framework prioritizes integrity, fairness, and compliance with organizational standards and ethical expectations. Question 3. Comparative studies suggest that in large state-owned enterprises like PetroChina, the implementation of internal compliance policies, particularly those concerning conflicts of interest, can be challenging due to the interplay of personal relationships and business dealings. Considering the ethical imperative and the need to maintain robust corporate governance, if an employee develops a close personal friendship with a representative of a key supplier, and this friendship predates their current role, what is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with PetroChina's internal guidelines on conflicts of interest? Option A. Assume no reporting is necessary as the friendship is purely social and predates the employee's current role, and no direct business benefit has been sought or received. Option B. Wait until a specific procurement decision or transaction is directly influenced by the friendship, before reporting the relationship to the relevant authorities. Option C. Formally report the close personal relationship to the designated compliance department, outlining the nature of the friendship and its potential implications for procurement decisions, and seek guidance on managing the situation. Option D. Discuss the friendship informally with a direct supervisor to gauge their opinion on whether reporting is required, without making a formal submission to the compliance department. The correct answer is C. Formally report the close personal relationship to the designated compliance department, outlining the nature of the friendship and its potential implications for procurement decisions, and seek guidance on managing the situation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the implementation of PetroChina's internal compliance policies, specifically concerning the reporting of potential conflicts of interest. The challenge lies in balancing the imperative of transparent disclosure with the practicalities of day-to-day business operations, and the potential for over-reporting or under-reporting. Employees are expected to exercise sound judgment in identifying and escalating situations that could reasonably be perceived as a conflict, even if no direct impropriety has occurred. The pressure to meet performance targets can sometimes create an environment where employees might be hesitant to report potential conflicts, fearing it could be perceived negatively or lead to unnecessary scrutiny. Therefore, a robust understanding of the policy's intent and scope is crucial for effective implementation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively identifying a situation where a close personal relationship with a key supplier's representative could influence procurement decisions, and then formally reporting this potential conflict of interest to the designated compliance department. This aligns with PetroChina's commitment to ethical conduct and robust internal controls, as mandated by its internal policies and general principles of corporate governance, applicable within the Chinese regulatory environment for state-owned enterprises. Prompt and transparent reporting allows the company to assess the situation, implement appropriate mitigation strategies, such as recusal from decision-making or enhanced oversight, and thereby safeguard the integrity of its procurement processes and prevent any appearance of impropriety. This proactive stance demonstrates adherence to the spirit and letter of compliance, fostering trust and accountability. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that because no explicit directive was given to avoid engaging with the supplier, and the relationship is purely social, no reporting is necessary. This fails to recognize that PetroChina's policies likely aim to prevent not only actual conflicts, but also the appearance of conflicts. Potential for unconscious bias or preferential treatment, even if unintentional, creates an ethical risk that requires disclosure and management. Another incorrect approach is to only report the relationship if a specific transaction or decision is directly impacted. This reactive stance is insufficient, as it misses the opportunity for proactive risk management. The policy's intent is to identify potential issues before they manifest into tangible problems, thereby preventing potential reputational damage or regulatory scrutiny. A third incorrect approach is to discuss the situation informally with a direct supervisor without formal reporting. While informal communication can be a starting point, it does not fulfill the formal reporting requirement, which ensures that the compliance department is officially aware and can implement standardized procedures for conflict management. This bypasses established internal controls and may not be documented, leaving the company vulnerable. Professional reasoning. Professionals in such situations should adopt a framework that prioritizes transparency and adherence to established compliance procedures. This involves 1. Understanding the scope and intent of internal policies, particularly those related to conflicts of interest and ethical conduct. 2. Proactively identifying situations that could reasonably be perceived as a conflict, even if no direct wrongdoing has occurred. This requires a degree of self-awareness and an understanding of potential biases. 3. Following the designated reporting channels for any identified potential conflicts, ensuring that the information is formally documented and communicated to the appropriate compliance or legal department. 4. Cooperating fully with any subsequent review or mitigation efforts initiated by the company. This systematic approach ensures that ethical standards are upheld, regulatory requirements are met, and the company's reputation and operational integrity are protected. Question 4. The performance metrics show a concerning upward trend in minor equipment malfunctions and near-miss incidents reported across multiple offshore production units. While no major accidents have occurred, the frequency of these events has doubled in the last quarter. Considering PetroChina's stringent safety protocols and the regulatory environment overseen by the State Administration of Work Safety, SAWS, which of the following actions best reflects a professionally responsible and compliant response to this trend? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive review of maintenance logs, operational procedures, and personnel training records for the affected units to identify any common contributing factors or systemic weaknesses, and subsequently develop targeted corrective actions. Option B. Implement a temporary, across-the-board reduction in operational tempo for all offshore units to allow for a period of intensified, unscheduled inspections, aiming to identify and rectify any immediate physical defects. Option C. Advise all platform supervisors to emphasize adherence to existing safety checklists and to document all minor incidents more rigorously, attributing the increase to heightened reporting diligence rather than underlying issues. Option D. Allocate a portion of the operational budget towards immediate upgrades of non-critical equipment across all platforms, assuming that general equipment wear is the primary driver of the increased malfunctions. The correct answer is A. Initiate a comprehensive review of maintenance logs, operational procedures, and personnel training records for the affected units to identify any common contributing factors or systemic weaknesses, and subsequently develop targeted corrective actions. Explanation: the performance metrics show a significant increase in reported safety incidents across several offshore drilling platforms operated by PetroChina. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires immediate and effective action to address potential systemic issues, balancing operational efficiency with the paramount importance of worker safety and environmental protection. A failure to act decisively could lead to severe consequences, including loss of life, environmental damage, reputational harm, and significant financial penalties. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, data-driven investigation that prioritizes root cause analysis and proactive risk mitigation. This aligns with PetroChina's commitment to operational excellence and adherence to national and international safety regulations, such as those mandated by the State Administration of Work Safety, SAWS, and industry best practices. It emphasizes a culture of continuous improvement and learning from incidents, ensuring that corrective actions are sustainable and prevent recurrence. This approach demonstrates professional responsibility by taking all reported incidents seriously, regardless of severity, and implementing robust safety management systems. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost-cutting measures without a thorough investigation would be professionally unacceptable. This would violate the ethical obligation to protect workers and the environment, and potentially contravene SAWS regulations that mandate comprehensive incident reporting and investigation. Such an approach risks overlooking underlying systemic failures, leading to a false sense of security while the actual risks persist. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the increased reporting as a mere statistical anomaly or a result of increased vigilance without further scrutiny. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to acknowledge potential warning signs. It ignores the professional duty to investigate all safety-related data and could lead to a catastrophic event if underlying issues are not addressed. This approach fails to uphold the principles of a proactive safety culture. A third incorrect approach might involve implementing superficial corrective actions that do not address the root causes of the incidents. This could include simply increasing the frequency of superficial safety checks without analyzing the underlying reasons for the incidents. This approach is ethically questionable as it creates an illusion of safety without providing genuine protection and is likely to be non-compliant with SAWS requirements for effective risk management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging and validating the reported data. 2. Initiating a multidisciplinary investigation team to conduct a thorough root cause analysis. 3. Reviewing existing safety protocols and procedures for effectiveness. 4. Implementing evidence-based corrective and preventative actions. 5. Establishing a robust monitoring and evaluation framework to track the effectiveness of implemented measures. 6. Fostering open communication and a culture where safety concerns can be raised without fear of reprisal. Question 5. To address the challenge of a significant discrepancy identified between actual production output and reported figures, which approach best upholds PetroChina's commitment to regulatory compliance and ethical reporting standards. Option A. Classify the discrepancy as a minor operational error and provide a superficial explanation to internal management without further investigation or external reporting. Option B. Immediately report the discrepancy to the relevant internal departments and external regulatory bodies, initiating an investigation into the cause and implementing corrective measures. Option C. Delay the reporting of the discrepancy until a more opportune time, hoping it will be overlooked or resolved through routine operational adjustments. Option D. Adjust the reporting figures to align with the production targets, attributing the difference to minor accounting adjustments without full disclosure. The correct answer is B. Immediately report the discrepancy to the relevant internal departments and external regulatory bodies, initiating an investigation into the cause and implementing corrective measures. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between achieving ambitious performance targets and adhering to ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. PetroChina, as a state-owned enterprise, operates within a framework that emphasizes both economic efficiency and social responsibility. The pressure to meet production quotas can create an environment where shortcuts or misrepresentations might seem appealing, but such actions carry significant risks of regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of stakeholder trust. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing pressures. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent communication strategy. This means immediately reporting the identified discrepancy to the relevant internal authorities and external regulatory bodies, as required by PetroChina's internal policies and relevant Chinese regulations governing the energy sector. This demonstrates a commitment to accuracy, integrity, and compliance. By promptly disclosing the issue, the company can initiate corrective actions, mitigate potential harm, and maintain its credibility. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and regulatory adherence expected of major state-owned enterprises. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves attempting to manage the reporting to make the figures appear to meet targets without disclosing the underlying issue. This constitutes a direct violation of accounting standards and potentially securities regulations if PetroChina's shares are publicly traded. It is an act of misrepresentation, which can lead to severe penalties, including fines, sanctions, and even criminal charges for individuals involved. Ethically, it breaches the duty of honesty and transparency owed to stakeholders. Another incorrect approach is to delay reporting the discrepancy until a later period or until it is discovered through an audit. This delay is a form of concealment and can exacerbate the consequences once the truth emerges. It suggests an intent to mislead or avoid accountability, which is a serious ethical lapse and a regulatory violation. The longer the delay, the more difficult it becomes to rectify the situation, and the greater the potential damage to the company's reputation and financial standing. A third incorrect approach is to attribute the discrepancy to minor operational errors without investigating the root cause or reporting the potential for systemic issues. While minor errors can occur, a significant discrepancy warrants a thorough investigation. Failing to do so and instead offering a superficial explanation can be seen as an attempt to downplay the seriousness of the situation, which is both ethically questionable and a failure to comply with due diligence requirements. It also prevents the implementation of necessary systemic improvements. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should follow a structured decision-making process. First, they must identify the discrepancy and understand its potential implications. Second, they should consult PetroChina's internal code of conduct and relevant Chinese regulations to determine the reporting obligations. Third, they should gather all relevant facts and documentation. Fourth, they should communicate the issue promptly and transparently to the appropriate internal stakeholders and, if necessary, external regulators. Finally, they should cooperate fully in any subsequent investigation or corrective action. This process prioritizes integrity, compliance, and responsible corporate behavior. Question 6. The assessment process reveals that a proposed offshore oil exploration project in a sensitive marine ecosystem faces potential delays due to the Environmental Protection Agency's EPA, concerns regarding the adequacy of the submitted Environmental Impact Assessment (IA) report. The project timeline is critical for meeting production targets. Which of the following actions best represents the most responsible and effective approach for PetroChina to address these concerns and secure timely approval, adhering strictly to the People's Republic of China's environmental regulatory framework? Option A. Immediately initiate a public relations campaign to highlight the economic benefits of the project and lobby for expedited review, while making minor, superficial adjustments to the EIA to address the EPA's stated concerns. Option B. Instruct the internal project team to expedite the process by reclassifying certain potential environmental impacts as negligible, thereby reducing the scope of required mitigation measures in the revised EIA. Option C. Suspend all communication with the EPA and proceed with the project based on the initial EIA, assuming the EPA's concerns are procedural rather than substantive, and address any future issues reactively. Option D. Commission a supplementary, independent environmental study focusing on the specific areas of concern raised by the EPA, engage directly with the EPA to understand their precise requirements, and revise the EIA with detailed, science-based mitigation strategies. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate a public relations campaign to highlight the economic benefits of the project and lobby for expedited review, while making minor, superficial adjustments to the EIA to address the EPA's stated concerns. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in the energy sector, balancing the need for rapid project development with stringent environmental protection regulations. PetroChina, operating within the People's Republic of China, PRC, regulatory framework, must navigate the complexities of environmental impact assessments, IA, and their subsequent approval processes. This scenario is professionally challenging because delays in project approval can lead to significant financial losses and missed market opportunities, while non-compliance with environmental laws can result in severe penalties, reputational damage, and operational shutdowns. The core tension lies in ensuring that all necessary environmental safeguards are robustly implemented and documented without unduly hindering the strategic objectives of the company. The correct approach emphasizes proactive engagement with regulatory bodies and a thorough, science-based EIA. This aligns with the PRC's environmental protection law and the regulations on environmental impact assessment, which mandate comprehensive assessments and public consultation where applicable. Best professional practice dictates that the company should invest in high-quality environmental studies conducted by qualified experts, ensuring that potential impacts are accurately identified and mitigation measures are feasible and effective. Furthermore, maintaining open communication with the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, ME, and relevant provincial environmental protection bureaus throughout the assessment and approval stages is crucial. This transparency and diligence demonstrate a commitment to regulatory compliance and responsible corporate citizenship, minimizing the risk of rejection or subsequent enforcement actions. An incorrect approach would be to submit a superficial or incomplete EIA, hoping for a quick approval. This violates the spirit and letter of PRC environmental laws, which require genuine assessment and mitigation. Such an approach risks rejection by the MEE, leading to project delays and the need for costly revisions. Another incorrect approach is to bypass or downplay potential environmental risks to expedite the process. This is not only unethical, but also a direct contravention of the precautionary principle embedded in environmental legislation. It could lead to significant environmental damage, triggering substantial fines, legal liabilities, and severe damage to PetroChina's reputation, potentially impacting its social license to operate. Finally, attempting to influence the approval process through informal channels or by withholding critical information is a serious ethical and regulatory breach. This undermines the integrity of the regulatory system and can lead to severe legal consequences for both individuals and the company. Professionals in this situation should adopt a structured decision-making process. First, thoroughly understand the specific environmental regulations applicable to the project's location and scope. Second, engage qualified environmental consultants to conduct a comprehensive and scientifically sound EIA. Third, develop a robust mitigation and monitoring plan. Fourth, proactively engage with the relevant environmental authorities, providing all requested information transparently and promptly. Fifth, establish internal review mechanisms to ensure the EIA and mitigation plans meet both regulatory requirements and the company's own environmental standards. This systematic approach ensures compliance, minimizes risks, and fosters a positive relationship with regulators. Question 7. The evaluation methodology shows a scenario where a junior financial analyst identifies a significant variance between the geological reserve estimates and the financial projections for a new upstream project. The analyst suspects the geological data may be overly optimistic, potentially inflating the project's projected profitability. What is the most appropriate course of action for the analyst to ensure the integrity of the financial assessment and adhere to PetroChina's internal reporting guidelines? Option A. Attempt to reconcile the discrepancy by requesting detailed supporting data and explanations from the geology department, and if unresolved, formally document and report the issue to their direct supervisor. Option B. Proceed with the current financial projections, assuming the geological department's estimates are accurate and any discrepancies are minor. Option C. Immediately escalate the discrepancy to senior management and the audit committee, providing all supporting documentation of the suspected overestimation. Option D. Adjust the financial projections downwards unilaterally to reflect a more conservative estimate, assuming the geological data is flawed. The correct answer is C. Immediately escalate the discrepancy to senior management and the audit committee, providing all supporting documentation of the suspected overestimation. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a scenario where a junior analyst, tasked with assessing the financial viability of a new upstream exploration project, discovers a significant discrepancy in the projected reserve estimates provided by the geology department. This discrepancy, if unaddressed, could lead to a substantial overestimation of future cash flows and a misleadingly positive investment recommendation. The professional challenge lies in navigating the internal hierarchy and potential departmental friction, while upholding the integrity of the financial assessment and adhering to PetroChina's internal reporting standards and relevant Chinese financial regulations concerning disclosure and due diligence. The correct approach involves a structured, evidence-based escalation process. This means the junior analyst should first attempt to understand the source of the discrepancy by requesting clarification and supporting data from the geology department. If the discrepancy persists and cannot be resolved through dialogue, the analyst must then formally document their findings, including the data supporting their concerns, and present this to their direct supervisor. This ensures transparency, allows for senior oversight, and initiates a formal review process. This aligns with principles of professional skepticism and due diligence mandated by financial reporting standards and internal PetroChina policies, which require accurate and reliable financial information for decision-making. It also reflects ethical obligations to act with integrity and competence. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the discrepancy, either due to fear of reprisal or a desire to meet reporting deadlines. This failure to identify and report material inaccuracies constitutes a breach of professional duty and could lead to significant financial losses for the company, violating principles of prudence and fiduciary responsibility. Another incorrect approach would be to unilaterally alter the reserve estimates without proper consultation or justification from the geology department. This bypasses essential interdepartmental collaboration and could be construed as data manipulation, undermining the credibility of the financial analysis and violating internal control procedures. Furthermore, directly reporting the discrepancy to external auditors or regulators without first following internal escalation protocols would be a breach of internal reporting lines and could damage interdepartmental relationships and the company's reputation. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes accuracy, transparency, and adherence to established procedures. This involves 1. Information gathering and verification. Thoroughly understand the data and identify the nature of the discrepancy. 2. Internal consultation. Seek clarification and resolution through appropriate channels within the organization. 3. Documentation. Maintain detailed records of all communications, data, and findings. 4. Escalation. Follow defined reporting lines for unresolved issues, ensuring senior management is informed. 5. Professional judgment. Apply critical thinking and professional skepticism throughout the process, always aiming for the most accurate and reliable outcome. Question 8. Quality control measures reveal that a significant number of invoices processed in the previous quarter contained an error in the calculation of value-added tax, VAT, due to an outdated tax rate being applied. While the aggregate financial impact of these errors is assessed to be below the materiality threshold for financial statement purposes, the errors are systematic and affect multiple transactions. The Finance Department is considering how to address this issue. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for PetroChina's Finance Department? Option A. Investigate the root cause of the error and implement corrective measures to prevent recurrence, but defer any adjustments or disclosures until the next annual audit. Option B. Correct the VAT calculation errors for all affected invoices and proactively disclose the nature of the errors and the corrective actions taken to senior management and the audit committee. Option C. Record the misstatement as is, given that it is below the materiality threshold and will not impact the overall financial statements. Option D. Adjust the current quarter's VAT liability to offset the prior period's underpayment, without explicitly disclosing the historical error to senior management or the audit committee. Correct answer is B. Correct the VAT calculation errors for all affected invoices and proactively disclose the nature of the errors and the corrective actions taken to senior management and the audit committee. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in ensuring the integrity of financial reporting and compliance with PetroChina's internal policies and relevant Chinese accounting standards. The challenge lies in balancing the need for accurate financial representation with potential pressures to present a more favorable financial picture, especially when dealing with a significant, albeit non-material, misstatement. Careful judgment is required to determine the appropriate course of action that upholds ethical principles and regulatory compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes transparency and adherence to accounting standards. By promptly identifying, quantifying, and disclosing the misstatement, even if not material, the company demonstrates a commitment to accurate financial reporting. This aligns with the principles of the accounting standards for business enterprises, SBE in China, which emphasize faithful representation and prudence. Furthermore, it reflects a strong internal control environment and a culture of ethical conduct, which are crucial for maintaining investor confidence and regulatory trust. Proactive communication with senior management and the audit committee ensures that all stakeholders are informed and can make decisions based on complete and accurate information. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking the misstatement due to its non-materiality fails to uphold the principle of faithful representation. While materiality is a key consideration in auditing, it does not absolve management of the responsibility to correct all known misstatements. This approach could be seen as a violation of SBE principles and potentially internal PetroChina policies that mandate accurate record keeping. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to correct the misstatement in a way that obscures its nature or impact, would constitute a deliberate misrepresentation of financial information, a serious ethical and regulatory breach. This could lead to accusations of fraud or manipulation, severely damaging the company's reputation and potentially incurring legal penalties. A third incorrect approach, which involves delaying disclosure or only informing a limited group of stakeholders, undermines transparency and could be interpreted as an attempt to conceal information, violating principles of good corporate governance and potentially SBE disclosure requirements. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the relevant accounting standards, SBE, and internal company policies. This framework should involve 1. Identifying and quantifying the issue, accurately determine the nature and financial impact of the misstatement. 2. Assessing materiality. While the initial assessment might deem it non-material, consider the cumulative effect and the principle of faithful representation. 3. Consulting internal policies and experts. Review PetroChina's internal accounting policies and consult with the accounting department or internal audit for guidance. 4. Escalating appropriately. Inform senior management and the audit committee promptly and transparently. 5. Documenting the process. Maintain clear records of the identification, assessment, and resolution of the misstatement. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are well-reasoned, compliant, and ethically sound. Question 9. Consider a scenario where PetroChina is implementing a new internal policy requiring employees to report any potential conflicts of interest that could arise in their professional duties. The policy document has been distributed to all staff, but there has been limited uptake in reporting. What is the most effective approach to ensure successful implementation and compliance with this new policy? Option A. Focus solely on disciplinary measures for any discovered instances of unreported conflicts of interest, without providing additional training or support on the reporting process. Option B. Implement a system where employees must report potential conflicts directly to their immediate supervisor, with no alternative reporting options available. Option C. Conduct mandatory, interactive training sessions for all employees, detailing the policy scope, providing clear examples of reportable conflicts, and establishing multiple, accessible channels for reporting, including a confidential hotline and direct reporting to HR or compliance officers. Option D. Assume employees have read and understood the policy and will report conflicts as they arise, relying on the initial distribution of the policy document as sufficient communication. The correct answer is C. Conduct mandatory, interactive training sessions for all employees, detailing the policy scope, providing clear examples of reportable conflicts, and establishing multiple, accessible channels for reporting, including a confidential hotline and direct reporting to HR or compliance officers. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the implementation of new internal compliance policies within PetroChina, specifically concerning the reporting of potential conflicts of interest. The challenge lies in balancing the need for robust compliance with the practicalities of employee understanding and adherence, especially when dealing with a diverse workforce and potentially complex reporting structures. Ensuring that employees not only understand the policy, but also feel empowered and clear on how to report, without fear of undue reprisal or administrative burden, is critical for effective implementation. This requires careful communication, training, and a supportive reporting environment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes proactive communication, comprehensive training, and the establishment of clear, accessible reporting channels. This aligns with PetroChina's commitment to ethical conduct and regulatory adherence. By providing multiple avenues for reporting, e.g., direct manager, dedicated compliance hotline, HR department, and ensuring that employees understand the why behind the policy, the company fosters a culture of transparency and accountability. This approach minimizes the risk of non-compliance due to ignorance or confusion, thereby upholding the integrity of internal controls and demonstrating a commitment to best practices in corporate governance. It also aligns with the spirit of regulatory frameworks that mandate robust internal controls and ethical reporting mechanisms. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves merely distributing a policy document without further explanation or training. This fails to address the practical implementation challenges and assumes a level of understanding that may not exist. It creates a significant risk of non-compliance due to employee confusion or oversight, which could lead to breaches of internal policy and potentially regulatory violations if the conflict of interest is material. Ethically, it falls short of the duty of care to adequately inform and equip employees. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on a single, potentially intimidating reporting channel without providing alternatives or clear guidance on its use. This can discourage reporting, as employees may fear direct confrontation or administrative complexity. It creates a bottleneck and increases the likelihood that potential conflicts are not identified and addressed promptly, undermining the effectiveness of the compliance program. This approach can be seen as a procedural formality rather than a genuine commitment to a transparent reporting culture. A third incorrect approach might be to implement the policy with a punitive tone, focusing on disciplinary actions for non-compliance without adequate emphasis on education and support. While accountability is important, an overly punitive stance can create a climate of fear, discouraging employees from coming forward with potential issues. This can lead to a situation where conflicts are hidden rather than resolved, ultimately harming the company's reputation and operational integrity. It fails to foster the trust necessary for a truly effective compliance program. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such implementation challenges should adopt a phased approach. First, thoroughly understand the policy's objectives and potential impact on various employee groups. Second, develop a clear, multifaceted communication and training strategy that addresses potential ambiguities and provides practical guidance. Third, establish and clearly communicate accessible and confidential reporting mechanisms. Fourth, monitor the effectiveness of the implementation through feedback and periodic reviews, making adjustments as necessary. This systematic process ensures that compliance initiatives are not just documented, but are effectively integrated into the daily operations and culture of the organization, thereby mitigating risks and promoting ethical conduct. Question 10. The investigation demonstrates that a junior accountant, under significant pressure to meet quarterly financial targets, discovers a potential accounting error that, if corrected, would cause the company to miss its projected earnings. The accountant is aware that the error is not intentional fraud, but a genuine oversight that could be rectified. The accountant is also aware that the senior management team is highly focused on achieving these specific targets. What is the most appropriate course of action for the junior accountant? Option A. Discuss the error with a senior colleague outside the accounting department to get their opinion on how to proceed. Option B. Ignore the potential misstatement to avoid jeopardizing the company's ability to meet its financial targets and the accountant's own performance review. Option C. Adjust the accounting records to correct the error without informing anyone, hoping that the correction goes unnoticed. Option D. Immediately report the potential misstatement to the company's compliance department and document all communications regarding the discovery and reporting of the error. Correct answer is D. Immediately report the potential misstatement to the company's compliance department and document all communications regarding the discovery and reporting of the error. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the potential conflict between achieving business objectives and upholding ethical standards, specifically concerning the integrity of financial reporting. The pressure to meet targets, coupled with the knowledge of a potential misstatement, creates a dilemma where personal ambition or company performance could be prioritized over accuracy and compliance. This requires careful judgment to navigate the competing interests and ensure that professional duties are not compromised. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves escalating the concern through the appropriate channels within the company, such as the compliance department or internal audit, and documenting all communications. This aligns with the ethical principles of integrity, objectivity, and professional competence expected of employees in the financial sector. It also adheres to the spirit and letter of regulations that mandate accurate financial reporting and prohibit fraudulent activities. By raising the issue internally, the individual acts responsibly to rectify the situation before it becomes a more significant problem, thereby protecting the company and its stakeholders. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves overlooking the potential misstatement due to the pressure to meet targets. This is a direct violation of ethical duties and regulatory requirements for accurate financial reporting. It could lead to material misstatements in financial statements, deceiving investors and regulators, and potentially resulting in severe legal and financial penalties for the company and individuals involved. This approach demonstrates a lack of integrity and professional skepticism. Another incorrect approach is to directly report the issue to external regulators without first attempting to resolve it internally. While whistleblowing is a protected right in certain circumstances, bypassing internal reporting mechanisms without a valid reason, e.g., evidence of management complicity or lack of response, can be seen as unprofessional and may not be the most effective way to achieve a swift resolution. It can also damage internal trust and create an adversarial environment. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to fix the misstatement independently without proper authorization or adherence to accounting standards. This could lead to further inaccuracies, unauthorized accounting entries, and potentially violate internal controls and external regulations. It bypasses the established processes for financial reporting adjustments and could be construed as an attempt to conceal or manipulate financial data. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a dilemma should employ a structured decision-making process. First, they must identify the ethical and regulatory obligations at play. Second, they should gather all relevant facts and assess the potential impact of the situation. Third, they should consider the available courses of action, evaluating each against ethical principles and regulatory requirements. Fourth, they should consult with trusted colleagues, supervisors, or the compliance department if unsure. Finally, they must choose the course of action that best upholds their professional responsibilities and protects the integrity of financial reporting, documenting their decision-making process throughout. Question 11. Upon reviewing internal projections for PetroChina's upcoming quarterly earnings, an employee realizes that the projected figures, if accurate, would represent a significant positive deviation from current market expectations, likely leading to a substantial increase in the company's stock price. The employee has no immediate plans to trade, but is considering whether to purchase shares for their personal investment portfolio in the near future. Believing it to be a sound financial decision based on this information, what is the most appropriate course of action for the employee? Option A. Wait until the quarterly earnings are officially announced and then purchase shares, as the information will then be public knowledge. Option B. Proceed with purchasing PetroChina shares for their personal portfolio, as the information is not yet public and the employee intends to hold the shares for a long-term investment. Option C. Immediately disclose the potential conflict of interest and the nature of the information to PetroChina's compliance department and await their guidance before taking any action. Option D. Discuss the projected earnings with a close family member who is an experienced investor, suggesting they might consider investing in PetroChina. The correct answer is C. Immediately disclose the potential conflict of interest and the nature of the information to PetroChina's compliance department and await their guidance before taking any action. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the conflict between personal gain and the duty of loyalty and integrity owed to PetroChina. The employee is privy to sensitive, non-public information that could significantly impact their personal financial decisions. The challenge lies in navigating the ethical tightrope of using this information responsibly, ensuring it does not lead to insider trading or any perception of impropriety, while also fulfilling their professional obligations. The need for careful judgment is paramount to uphold the company's reputation and maintain market fairness. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately disclosing the potential conflict of interest to the relevant internal compliance department or supervisor, as per PetroChina's internal policies and relevant securities regulations concerning disclosure of material non-public information. This demonstrates transparency, adherence to corporate governance, and a commitment to ethical conduct. By seeking guidance and following established procedures, the employee ensures that any actions taken are in full compliance with regulatory frameworks designed to prevent market manipulation and insider trading. This proactive disclosure is the cornerstone of maintaining trust and integrity within the financial markets and the organization. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to proceed with the stock purchase without any disclosure. This directly violates regulations against insider trading, which prohibit trading securities based on material non-public information. It also breaches the duty of loyalty to PetroChina by potentially exploiting confidential information for personal benefit, undermining fair market practices and the company's reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to discuss the information with a trusted friend or family member who might then trade on it. This constitutes aiding and abetting insider trading, carrying severe legal and ethical consequences for both parties. It demonstrates a disregard for confidentiality and a failure to uphold the principles of market integrity. A third incorrect approach would be to wait until after the information is publicly released to make the investment, but to have made the decision to invest based on the non-public information. While the trade itself might not be illegal insider trading, the intent and the reliance on non-public information to form the investment strategy can still be ethically questionable and may violate internal company policies regarding the use of confidential information, even if not directly traded upon. It still leverages privileged knowledge in a way that could be seen as unfair to other market participants. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such situations should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, adherence to regulations, and consultation. The first step is to identify the potential conflict and the nature of the information. Next, consult internal company policies and relevant regulatory guidelines. If there is any doubt, err on the side of caution and disclose. Proactive communication with compliance or legal departments is crucial. This ensures that decisions are made with full awareness of ethical and legal implications, safeguarding both personal integrity and the reputation of the organization. Question 12. The audit findings indicate several minor discrepancies in the accounting records that management believes are immaterial and can be rectified in the next financial period. Management is eager to finalize the audit report promptly to meet a critical business deadline. As the lead auditor, how should you proceed? Option A. Document the discrepancies but proceed with issuing the audit opinion based on the current financial statements, deferring the resolution to a future period. Option B. Insist on a thorough investigation and resolution of all identified discrepancies before issuing the audit opinion, regardless of the perceived materiality or the timeline pressure. Option C. Agree to a reduced scope of audit work to meet the expedited timeline, focusing only on the most significant financial statement areas. Option D. Accept management's assurance that the discrepancies are minor and will be corrected later, and proceed with issuing the audit opinion based on their representation. The correct answer is B. Insist on a thorough investigation and resolution of all identified discrepancies before issuing the audit opinion, regardless of the perceived materiality or the timeline pressure. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between immediate business pressures and long-term ethical and regulatory compliance. The auditor's discovery of potential misstatements, coupled with management's desire to expedite the audit, creates a dilemma. The pressure to overlook minor discrepancies for the sake of speed and maintaining good relations with management is a common, yet dangerous, ethical pitfall. Professional judgment is required to balance the need for thoroughness with the practicalities of an audit engagement. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach is to insist on a thorough investigation and resolution of all identified discrepancies, regardless of their perceived materiality or the pressure to conclude the audit quickly. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principles of integrity, objectivity, and professional competence, as well as the regulatory framework governing audits. Specifically, auditing standards require auditors to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to support their opinion. Overlooking potential misstatements, even if seemingly minor, compromises the audit's reliability and could lead to an inaccurate audit opinion, violating professional responsibilities and potentially leading to regulatory sanctions. This approach upholds the auditor's duty to the public interest and the integrity of financial reporting. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to accept management's assurance that the discrepancies are minor and will be corrected in the next reporting period without independent verification. This fails to exercise professional skepticism and due care. It violates the principle of obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence and could lead to material misstatements remaining undetected, breaching auditing standards and potentially leading to legal repercussions for both the auditor and the company. Another incorrect approach is to agree to a reduced scope of work to meet the expedited timeline, focusing only on the most significant areas. This is a direct contravention of auditing standards, which mandate a comprehensive audit approach. It demonstrates a lack of professional competence and objectivity, as the auditor is allowing external pressures to dictate the quality and completeness of their work. This could result in a flawed audit opinion and a breach of professional ethics. A third incorrect approach is to document the discrepancies but not insist on their immediate resolution, proceeding with the audit opinion based on the current, potentially flawed, financial statements. While documentation is important, it does not absolve the auditor of the responsibility to ensure the accuracy of the financial statements. This approach fails to address the identified issues proactively and could still lead to an inaccurate audit opinion, thereby failing to uphold the auditor's professional responsibilities and potentially violating regulatory requirements for accurate financial reporting. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such situations should follow a structured decision-making process. First, identify the ethical and regulatory principles at stake. Second, gather all relevant facts and evidence. Third, consider the potential consequences of different actions. Fourth, consult with senior colleagues or ethics committees if unsure. Fifth, prioritize professional integrity and compliance with standards over expediency or pleasing management. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are well-reasoned, defensible, and uphold the highest professional standards. Question 13. Examination of the data shows a significant and unexplained deviation in the projected revenue figures for a key subsidiary, a deviation that appears to have been deliberately understated in the final report submitted by a senior manager. You have a strong working relationship with the senior manager, who has been a mentor to you. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Discuss your concerns with the senior manager directly and privately, seeking clarification and urging them to correct the report. Option B. Ignore the discrepancy, assuming it is a minor oversight or a strategic decision that you are not privy to. Option C. Share your observations with trusted colleagues to gauge their opinions and gather support before taking any action. Option D. Report the discrepancy to the company's compliance department or ethics hotline, providing all factual data and observations. The correct answer is D. Report the discrepancy to the company's compliance department or ethics hotline, providing all factual data and observations. Explanation. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma involving potential conflicts of interest and the obligation to report. The professional challenge lies in balancing loyalty to a colleague with the imperative to uphold company policy and regulatory compliance. The data analyst is privy to information that, if acted upon, could have significant financial implications for PetroChina and potentially expose a breach of internal controls or even regulatory violations. The pressure to protect a colleague, especially one in a senior position, can be immense, but it must be weighed against the duty to act with integrity and transparency. The correct approach involves discreetly escalating the issue through appropriate channels, such as the compliance department or a designated ethics hotline. This represents best professional practice because it adheres to PetroChina's internal code of conduct and any relevant regulatory frameworks governing financial reporting and corporate governance. Such frameworks typically mandate reporting of suspected irregularities to prevent fraud, ensure accurate financial statements, and maintain market confidence. By reporting through official channels, the analyst ensures the matter is investigated impartially and professionally, protecting both the company and themselves from potential repercussions. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the discrepancy. This failure is significant because it constitutes a dereliction of duty and can be interpreted as complicity in any potential wrongdoing, violates the principle of integrity, and could lead to severe financial penalties for PetroChina and reputational damage if the issue later comes to light. Another incorrect approach is to confront the senior manager directly without involving the proper authorities. While seemingly an attempt to resolve the issue amicably, this bypasses established reporting mechanisms and could be perceived as an attempt to cover up or intimidate, potentially jeopardizing the investigation and placing the analyst in a vulnerable position. It also fails to leverage the expertise of compliance or legal departments who are equipped to handle such sensitive matters. A third incorrect approach would be to discuss the discrepancy with other colleagues before reporting. This constitutes a breach of confidentiality and could lead to the spread of rumors, damage professional relationships, and compromise the integrity of any subsequent investigation. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Recognizing the potential ethical or regulatory issue. 2. Consulting company policies and codes of conduct. 3. Identifying the appropriate reporting channels. 4. Gathering factual information without making assumptions. 5. Reporting the concern through the designated channels, maintaining confidentiality and objectivity. 6. Cooperating with any subsequent investigation. Question 14. Performance analysis shows a significant and unexplained deviation in the reported sales figures for a key product line, suggesting potential manipulation to meet quarterly targets. You have observed a colleague in your department making adjustments to the sales data that appear to inflate the numbers. Option A. Attempt to discreetly discuss the data discrepancy with your colleague and encourage them to correct it before the final report is submitted. Option B. Ignore the discrepancy and focus on your own performance metrics, assuming it is an isolated issue that will be handled by management. Option C. Adjust your own reported figures to align with the inflated numbers, ensuring consistency across departmental reporting. Option D. Report the observed data manipulation to the company's compliance department or ethics hotline immediately, providing all relevant details. The correct answer is D. Report the observed data manipulation to the company's compliance department or ethics hotline immediately, providing all relevant details. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a conflict between achieving performance targets and upholding ethical standards, a common challenge in competitive business environments. The pressure to meet or exceed performance metrics can tempt individuals to overlook or rationalize unethical behavior. The professional challenge lies in recognizing that short-term gains achieved through unethical means can lead to severe long-term consequences, including reputational damage, legal penalties, and loss of trust from stakeholders. Careful judgment is required to prioritize integrity over immediate results. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately reporting the observed discrepancy to the appropriate internal channels, such as a compliance department or a designated ethics hotline. This aligns with PetroChina's commitment to ethical conduct and regulatory compliance, which would be detailed in its internal code of conduct and any relevant PRC regulations concerning corporate governance and financial reporting. Prompt reporting ensures that the issue is investigated thoroughly and addressed appropriately, preventing further potential harm and demonstrating a commitment to transparency and accountability. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining the company's integrity and adhering to its legal and ethical obligations. Incorrect approach is analysis, failing to report the discrepancy, and instead attempting to manage the situation internally without formal reporting is an ethical failure. It bypasses established compliance procedures and could be construed as complicity or an attempt to conceal wrongdoing, violating principles of good corporate governance and potentially PRC anti-corruption laws if the discrepancy involves fraudulent activities. Ignoring the discrepancy and focusing solely on meeting the performance targets, even if it means accepting the inaccurate data, is also an ethical and professional failure. This demonstrates a disregard for accuracy and integrity in reporting, which is fundamental to sound business practices and regulatory compliance. It can lead to flawed decision-making based on incorrect information and undermine the credibility of performance analysis. Confronting the colleague directly and demanding they correct the data without involving the proper reporting channels is problematic. While direct communication can be valuable in situations involving potential misconduct or significant data discrepancies, it can escalate the situation inappropriately, create a hostile work environment, and potentially lead to the destruction of evidence or further attempts to cover up the issue. It also bypasses the established procedures designed to ensure fair and thorough investigation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and adherence to regulations. This involves 1. Identifying the ethical or regulatory concern. 2. Understanding the relevant company policies and legal frameworks. 3. Consulting with supervisors or compliance departments when unsure. 4. Acting with integrity and transparency. 5. Documenting actions taken. In this case, the framework dictates that any suspected breach of ethical standards or reporting inaccuracies must be escalated through official channels to ensure proper investigation and resolution. Question 15. Governance review demonstrates that a PetroChina employee has a close personal friendship with the owner of a potential supplier company. The employee's department is currently evaluating bids for a significant contract, and the friend's company is among the top contenders. The employee has not disclosed this relationship to their supervisor or the procurement team. What is the most ethical and compliant course of action for the employee? Option A. Discreetly advocate for their friend's company to the procurement team, highlighting their company's strengths and subtly downplaying any potential weaknesses, believing this will not be perceived as undue influence. Option B. Proceed with the evaluation process as normal, assuming the personal friendship will not influence their professional judgment or the decision-making of others involved in the procurement. Option C. Continue to work on the evaluation without disclosing the relationship, but privately decide to vote against their friend's company's bid to avoid any appearance of favoritism, regardless of the bid's merit. Option D. Immediately disclose the personal relationship and the potential business opportunity to their supervisor and the compliance department, requesting guidance on how to proceed and offering to recuse themselves from any decision-making processes involving this supplier. The correct answer is D. Immediately disclose the personal relationship and the potential business opportunity to their supervisor and the compliance department, requesting guidance on how to proceed and offering to recuse themselves from any decision-making processes involving this supplier. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a conflict between personal gain and professional integrity, a common ethical challenge in the corporate world. The challenge lies in navigating the potential for a perceived or actual conflict of interest when a close personal relationship intersects with business dealings. The employee must exercise sound judgment to uphold PetroChina's ethical standards and regulatory compliance, even when faced with a situation that could benefit them personally. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes transparency and adherence to PetroChina's code of conduct and relevant anti-corruption regulations. By disclosing the relationship and the potential business opportunity to their supervisor and the compliance department, the employee demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and avoids any appearance of impropriety. This proactive disclosure allows the company to assess the situation objectively, implement appropriate safeguards, such as recusal from decision-making or independent oversight, and ensure that all business decisions are made in the best interest of PetroChina, free from undue influence. This aligns with principles of good corporate governance and regulatory expectations regarding conflicts of interest. Incorrect approaches analysis. Failing to disclose the relationship and proceeding with the business opportunity creates a significant risk of a conflict of interest. This violates ethical principles of honesty and integrity and potentially breaches PetroChina's internal policies and any applicable anti-corruption laws that prohibit bribery or undue influence. It could lead to decisions being made based on personal connections rather than merit, harming the company's reputation and financial performance. Attempting to influence the decision-making process, even subtly, by leveraging the personal relationship is unethical and potentially illegal. This constitutes favoritism and undermines fair competition and objective evaluation of business proposals. It can be construed as an attempt to gain an unfair advantage, which is a direct violation of ethical business practices and anti-corruption regulations. Ignoring the potential conflict and assuming the relationship will not influence the decision is a form of self-deception and a failure to exercise due diligence. It demonstrates a lack of awareness or disregard for the importance of managing conflicts of interest, which are critical for maintaining trust and compliance within the organization and with external stakeholders. This passive approach still carries the risk of actual or perceived bias. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such dilemmas should follow a structured decision-making process. First, identify the potential ethical issue and any relevant company policies or regulations. Second, assess the nature and severity of the conflict. Third, consult with appropriate internal resources such as a supervisor, HR, or the compliance department to seek guidance. Fourth, act with transparency and integrity, prioritizing the company's best interests and regulatory obligations over personal gain. Documenting the process and the decision made is also crucial for accountability. Question 16. Analysis of a situation where a PetroChina procurement manager is responsible for evaluating bids for a critical project. The manager discovers that one of the leading bidders is a company owned by their close personal friend, with whom they have a long-standing relationship and a history of mutual business favors. The manager believes the friend's company is highly capable and could offer a competitive bid, but also recognizes the potential for perceived or actual bias in the evaluation process. Option A. Proceed with the evaluation, but make a note in the evaluation report acknowledging the personal relationship and stating that impartiality will be maintained. Option B. Immediately recuse oneself from the entire evaluation process for this project and report the conflict of interest to senior management and the ethics department. Option C. Discreetly favor the friend's company's bid during the evaluation, ensuring it meets the minimum requirements but is presented in the most favorable light. Option D. Inform the friend about the evaluation process and provide guidance on how to strengthen their bid to ensure they are competitive, while still participating in the evaluation. The correct answer is B. Immediately recuse oneself from the entire evaluation process for this project and report the conflict of interest to senior management and the ethics department. Explanation. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma involving potential conflicts of interest and the obligation to act in the best interests of PetroChina, while also adhering to principles of fair competition and transparency. The challenge lies in balancing personal gain with professional duty and regulatory compliance. The pressure to secure a favorable outcome for a personal acquaintance, coupled with the potential for significant personal benefit, can cloud judgment. The correct approach involves prioritizing PetroChina's interests and regulatory obligations above personal relationships and potential gains. This means recusing oneself from the decision-making process to avoid any perception of bias or impropriety. This aligns with the ethical principles of integrity, objectivity, and avoiding conflicts of interest, which are fundamental in professional conduct and are often codified in company policies and industry best practices. By stepping aside, the individual upholds the integrity of the procurement process and demonstrates a commitment to fair and transparent dealings, thereby protecting PetroChina from potential legal challenges, reputational damage, and suboptimal business decisions. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the evaluation while downplaying the relationship or assuring impartiality. This fails to acknowledge the inherent risk of bias, even if unintentional, violates the principle of avoiding conflicts of interest, and could lead to accusations of favor-taking or unfair advantage for the acquaintance's company. Another incorrect approach would be to actively steer the evaluation in favor of the acquaintance's company, even if their bid is competitive. This constitutes a clear breach of professional ethics and potentially regulatory requirements related to fair competition and anti-corruption. Such actions undermine the trust placed in the individual and the organization. A third incorrect approach might be to disclose the relationship to the acquaintance and offer advice on how to improve their bid while still participating in the evaluation. This, while seemingly helpful to the acquaintance, still creates an unfair advantage and compromises the integrity of the evaluation process. Professionals facing such situations should employ a structured decision-making process. First, identify the potential conflict of interest and its implications. Second, consult relevant company policies and codes of conduct regarding conflicts of interest and procurement ethics. Third, seek guidance from a supervisor or ethics officer if unsure. Fourth, prioritize transparency and disclosure. Finally, take decisive action to mitigate the conflict, which often means recusal from any decision-making role. Question 17. The evaluation methodology shows a need to enhance the throughput of a newly commissioned crude oil processing unit. Which of the following strategies best aligns with a responsible and effective process optimization approach within PetroChina's operational framework? Option A. Implement a phased adjustment of key operating parameters, supported by real-time data analytics and simulation modeling. Identify optimal settings for increased throughput while monitoring product quality and environmental compliance. Option B. Reduce the frequency of routine maintenance checks to free up operational staff for troubleshooting potential throughput bottlenecks. Option C. Adopt a process modification that has proven successful in a similar, but not identical, unit at a different PetroChina facility, without conducting site-specific validation. Option D. Immediately increase the feed rate to the unit based on theoretical maximum capacity, assuming current equipment can handle the load without further analysis. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased adjustment of key operating parameters, supported by real-time data analytics and simulation modeling, to identify optimal settings for increased throughput while monitoring product quality and environmental compliance. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a need to optimize the efficiency of a new crude oil processing unit. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing immediate cost-saving measures with long-term operational integrity and compliance with PetroChina's internal operational standards and relevant national environmental regulations. A hasty decision could lead to unforeseen operational disruptions, safety hazards, or non-compliance, impacting both profitability and reputation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive, data-driven analysis before implementing any changes. This involves a thorough review of historical performance data, current operational parameters, and potential impacts on product quality and environmental emissions. Adhering to established process optimization frameworks, which often align with industry best practices and regulatory expectations for continuous improvement, ensures that any proposed changes are robust, sustainable, and compliant. This methodical approach minimizes risk and maximizes the likelihood of achieving desired efficiency gains without compromising safety or regulatory standing. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reducing catalyst consumption without a full understanding of its impact on reaction kinetics and product yield would be professionally unacceptable. This fails to consider the interconnectedness of process variables and could lead to lower quality output or increased waste, negating any perceived cost savings. Another incorrect approach, which involves bypassing established safety protocols for faster diagnostics, represents a severe regulatory and ethical failure. PetroChina, like all major energy companies, operates under stringent safety regulations that mandate adherence to all safety procedures. Ignoring these for expediency is a direct violation and creates unacceptable risks. A third incorrect approach, which relies on anecdotal evidence from other facilities without site-specific validation, ignores the unique operational characteristics of the new unit and could lead to ineffective or detrimental changes, potentially violating internal performance benchmarks and industry standards for process optimization. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with clearly defining the optimization objectives. This is followed by data collection and analysis, hypothesis generation, experimental design, if necessary, implementation of validated solutions, and continuous monitoring and evaluation. This iterative process ensures that decisions are informed, evidence-based, and aligned with both operational goals and regulatory requirements. Question 18. The control framework reveals that the current method for managing inventory levels at remote exploration sites is time-consuming and relies heavily on manual data entry, leading to potential inaccuracies and delays in reordering critical supplies. This inefficiency impacts operational continuity and increases the risk of stockouts or overstocking. Which of the following represents the most appropriate approach to optimize this inventory management process? Option A. Immediately transition to a just-in-time JIT inventory system across all sites to minimize holding costs, without conducting a thorough analysis of the unique logistical challenges and potential supply chain vulnerabilities at each remote location. Option B. Implement a new, fully automated digital inventory management system that integrates real-time data from all sites, coupled with a comprehensive risk assessment and phased rollout strategy, ensuring alignment with PetroChina's data security policies and relevant industry regulations for supply chain management. Option C. Outsource the entire inventory management function to a third-party vendor without establishing clear performance metrics, oversight mechanisms, or ensuring the vendor's compliance with PetroChina's internal control standards and applicable national regulations. Option D. Reduce the frequency of inventory checks and reorder points to decrease the workload on site personnel, assuming that current stock levels are sufficient and that potential stockouts will not significantly disrupt operations. Correct answer is B. Implement a new, fully automated digital inventory management system that integrates real-time data from all sites, coupled with a comprehensive risk assessment and phased rollout strategy, ensuring alignment with PetroChina's data security policies and relevant industry regulations for supply chain management. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in process optimization within a large organization like PetroChina, where established procedures may not always align with current best practices or evolving regulatory landscapes. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for efficiency and cost-effectiveness with the imperative to maintain robust internal controls and compliance. Professionals must exercise sound judgment to identify genuine opportunities for improvement without compromising the integrity of operations or introducing undue risk. The correct approach, which involves a systematic review of existing processes against industry benchmarks and regulatory requirements, represents best professional practice because it is data-driven, risk-aware, and compliant. This method ensures that any proposed changes are not only efficient, but also sustainable and legally sound. It aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and operational excellence, which are paramount in the energy sector. Adhering to internal policies and external regulations, such as those governing environmental impact, safety, and financial reporting, is non-negotiable. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering the impact on control effectiveness would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to regulatory breaches, increased operational risks, and potential reputational damage. For instance, streamlining a quality control process to save time might inadvertently reduce the thoroughness of checks, increasing the likelihood of product defects or safety incidents, which could violate industry standards and PetroChina's own operational integrity guidelines. Another incorrect approach might be to adopt a new technology without adequate risk assessment or employee training. This could result in system failures, data breaches, or noncompliance with data privacy regulations, undermining operational stability and legal standing. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process when evaluating process optimization initiatives. This involves 1. Clearly defining the objectives of the optimization, ensuring they are aligned with strategic goals and regulatory compliance. 2. Conducting a thorough assessment of the current process, identifying bottlenecks, inefficiencies, and potential risks. 3. Benchmarking against industry best practices and relevant regulatory frameworks. 4. Developing and evaluating potential solutions, considering their impact on efficiency, cost, risk, and compliance. 5. Implementing the chosen solution with appropriate change management, training, and monitoring. 6. Continuously reviewing and refining the optimized process to ensure ongoing effectiveness and compliance. Question 19. Research into optimizing the crude oil refining process at PetroChina facility has identified several potential areas for improvement. One proposal suggests a significant alteration to a key catalytic cracking unit's operating parameters to increase throughput. This change has not undergone a formal risk assessment or pilot testing phase, but proponents argue it will yield immediate economic benefits. Which of the following represents the most professionally responsible approach to this proposed process optimization? Option A. Rely on the experience of the engineers proposing the change, assuming their expertise is sufficient to guarantee a successful outcome without further testing. Option B. Implement the proposed change immediately to capitalize on the projected economic benefits, as efficiency gains are a primary objective. Option C. Seek external consultants to review the proposal, but proceed with implementation while the consultants are still gathering information, to avoid delaying potential gains. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, including a detailed analysis of potential safety and environmental impacts, and initiate a controlled pilot study to validate the proposed parameter changes before full-scale implementation. Correct answer is B. Implement the proposed change immediately to capitalize on the projected economic benefits, as efficiency gains are a primary objective. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing efficiency gains with potential risks to operational integrity and compliance within PetroChina's established processes. The need for process optimization is clear, but the method chosen must align with the company's internal guidelines and any relevant national or industry-specific regulations governing operational changes. Careful judgment is required to ensure that proposed optimizations do not inadvertently create new vulnerabilities or violate existing standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven, and compliant method for evaluating and implementing process improvements. This involves thorough analysis of current performance, identification of bottlenecks, and the development of solutions that are tested and validated before full deployment. Adherence to PetroChina's internal change management protocols and relevant national energy sector regulations is paramount. This ensures that optimizations are not only effective but also safe, reliable, and legally sound, minimizing the risk of operational disruptions, environmental incidents, or regulatory penalties. An incorrect approach that bypasses established review and validation procedures would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach could lead to the implementation of flawed processes that compromise safety standards, increase the likelihood of equipment failure, or result in non-compliance with environmental protection laws. For instance, implementing a change without proper risk assessment could violate safety regulations requiring hazard identification and mitigation. Similarly, skipping a pilot phase might lead to unforeseen consequences that contravene operational efficiency mandates or quality control standards. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and the responsibility to maintain operational integrity. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the objectives of process optimization. This involves clearly defining what constitutes an improvement, e.g., reduced cycle time, lower energy consumption, enhanced safety. Next, they must identify all relevant internal policies and external regulations that govern the processes in question. A comprehensive analysis of the current process, including data collection and root cause analysis of inefficiencies, is crucial. Potential optimization strategies should then be developed and evaluated against predefined criteria, including feasibility, cost-effectiveness, safety, and compliance. A pilot or simulation phase is essential to test the proposed changes in a controlled environment. Finally, a robust change management process, including stakeholder communication and post-implementation monitoring, ensures successful and sustainable optimization. Question 20. Strategic planning requires a proactive approach to process optimization within PetroChina's operational framework, considering the company's commitment to safety, environmental stewardship, and regulatory compliance. Which of the following methodologies best aligns with these principles when proposing a significant change to an existing production process? Option A. Prioritizing the cost reduction aspect of the optimization above all other considerations, assuming that regulatory compliance will naturally follow successful cost-saving measures. Option B. Implementing the proposed change immediately based on the perceived efficiency gains and the operational team's informal consensus, with a plan to address any compliance issues that may arise later. Option C. Conducting a comprehensive feasibility study that includes a detailed risk assessment, environmental impact evaluation, and a review against all relevant PetroChina internal policies and external regulatory requirements, followed by a phased pilot implementation and stakeholder review. Option D. Relying solely on historical data from similar processes in other industries to justify the optimization, without specific validation within PetroChina's unique operational context. The correct answer is B. Implementing the proposed change immediately based on the perceived efficiency gains and the operational team's informal consensus, with a plan to address any compliance issues that may arise later. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between achieving operational efficiency and adhering to PetroChina's established regulatory framework and internal guidelines for process optimization. The need to balance cost reduction with maintaining safety standards, environmental compliance, and the integrity of operational processes is paramount. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed optimization does not inadvertently create new risks or violate existing mandates. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven, and compliant methodology. This involves thorough risk assessment, stakeholder consultation, and validation against PetroChina's specific operational and regulatory requirements. Such an approach ensures that process improvements are sustainable, safe, and aligned with the company's strategic objectives and legal obligations, thereby mitigating potential liabilities and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that bypasses formal review processes or relies solely on anecdotal evidence would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to the implementation of unsafe practices, environmental noncompliance, or operational disruptions, all of which are contrary to PetroChina's commitment to responsible operations and could result in severe penalties, legal action, and damage to the company's reputation. Another incorrect approach might involve prioritizing cost savings above all else, potentially leading to the neglect of critical safety or environmental controls, which is a direct violation of regulatory mandates and ethical responsibilities. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific objectives of the optimization initiative. This should be followed by a comprehensive review of all applicable PetroChina policies, industry best practices, and relevant national and international regulations. A thorough risk assessment, including potential safety, environmental, and operational impacts, is crucial. Engaging relevant stakeholders, such as operations, safety, and compliance departments, early in the process ensures buy-in and identifies potential issues. Finally, any proposed optimization should undergo rigorous testing and validation before full-scale implementation, with clear metrics for success and ongoing monitoring.